when I hear the song again, there's a line that John Keats wrote in a letter to the poet to Shelley, and he said, when it comes to your poems, load every rift with ore. In other words, like pack every, you know what I mean? Sometimes, and I said that to a friend of mine once, and he's like, "Well, dude, you might end up with a pretty heavy song then."
Welcome to the Back Catalog Listening Party, your weekly musical happy hour where musicians pick an album from their back catalog and tell the stories behind their favorite tracks in front of a live online audience.
This week we talk with folk singer, songwriter, and poet David Huckfelt. We revisit his 2019 album Stranger Angels, talk about its origins on Isle Royale National Park, and the primal power of old folk melodies. So pour a beverage, grab a snack, and kick back as we listen to music together here on the Back Catalog Listening Party, where it's always Friday and old albums never sounded better. Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday.
And welcome to the Back Catalog Listening Party. My name is Mother Banjo, one of your hosts.
My name is Anthony Ihrig, the other host.
And today we have joining us all the way across town from Minneapolis, David Huckfelt.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. All right.
And the banjo music won't stop.
It won't stop. And the applause is going wild and
going crazy.
That's just the kind of party we're going to have tonight.
It is. And folks are ready for a happy hour. Alan joining us from Texas, where they're getting some rain, and it sounds like much needed. So I'm glad to hear it, Alan. Welcome to the party. Connie joining us from Richfield, Minnesota.
Connie.
And Chris joining, he says it's a breezy time in Savage, Minnesota. And it is here in Minneapolis as well. Crazy Wizard of Oz style winds happening over here. So hold on to your small dogs and
your
bites.
Chardonnay.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll start this interview across town, but I might be at the other side of the Dakotas when this is over. So
yeah, exactly. Well, or maybe I'll just blow on to the south side here, where Tony and I are coming from. Well, it is our weekly happy hour. So if you just joined the party, tell us where you are tuned in from, and if you're enjoying a beverage or a snack. It is winter time, so I'm back to the red wine.
Oh.
Is what I'm doing, straight from the box, only the finest here. Tony, are you having a beverage or a snack?
I am. I'm enjoying the Free Wave Hazy IPA, the NA from the Athletic Brewing Company, once again in my Back Catalog Listening Party pint glass.
The only way to have a beer. Sounds good. NA or otherwise. David, are you having a drink or snack?
I think I had 7 whiskeys at Palmer's last night. So tonight, just for my dad, I'm just going straight old-fashioned hams. Yeah.
I love it.
Hydrating. Excellent.
Exactly. That's really good. Well, Alinda joining us from New Haven, Connecticut. Hi. And all of you, welcome to the Back Catalog Listening Party. This is the show where we invite some of our favorite artists to join us and revisit one of their old records and share stories and deep, dark secrets and answer your questions live. So if you have comments and questions as we go, feel free to put them in the live chat, and we will get to as many of them as we can. And I'm so excited about tonight's show because David, I think I talked with you about this at least a couple of years ago. I think I was at the Cedar Cultural Center for an Irish Cement show. Irish Cement and Anna Aggie, I think. And you were we were both just hanging out, attending the show. And I was like, I need to get you on the Back Catalog Listening Party. And he said, yeah.
Well, yeah, me too. And considering we've known each other since the late 1800s, it just makes sense we finally get to do this. No, it's such an honor. It really is.
It's great to have you, and to have you since your days with the group The Pines, and but maybe folks might or might not be familiar with you. So why don't you give a 2-minute maybe origin story of where David Huckfelt came from and fell into making this kind of music?
Yeah, I grew up in a small town in Iowa, and I tried kind of everything else before I decided to try music. So I went to the University of Iowa undergraduate poetry program. I studied philosophy. I studied religion. And it turns out, especially when it comes to poetry, if you read your poem sort of at somebody, they look at you weird. But if you play a song for them, you got a chance at connecting. So I've been touring full time for about 20 or 22 years now. The first 15 or so with my band, The Pines. And then once we were the hopeless romantics of the folk world. And after that, operations halted. I got an artist residency up on Isle Royale National Park, and I'd always planned on making a solo record. I just lost track of about 2 decades in between there. So I went up to that island in Lake Superior and I wrote 16 songs in 14 days. And that became the record Stranger Angels that we are going to listen to and talk over tonight. I tell you the truth, I haven't listened to it in a long time.
Excellent.
So,
Good.
yeah.
Yeah, well, you're not alone in that. I would say, 99% of our guests, Tony, do not listen to their records or haven't listened to the records that that we feature on the show, pretty much since they made them.
Which is a lot of the fun, really, is to kind of see the artist kind of go back in time and remember this as not just a collection of songs, but a time and a place and people and all of that kind of stuff. So if you're new to the show, this is what we do. We listen to records that need to be listened to again. And we geek out about the songwriting and the recording and the arranging and all of the kinds of things that go into album making. But I say before we get into any of that, we get right down to the music. And the first track that we have queued up here is Stranger Angels. So we got the title track. What would you like to say about this one before we get started?
Yeah, I feel like it always piques the interest when when an artist chooses to even have a title track anymore, and so this is very intentional. There's about 19 different worlds coming together in this concept of strange angels, everything from sort of the biblical aspect of treating strangers with generosity, because you never know, they could be angels unaware, to the fact that we are part of creation. The music video for this song features footage from the trail cameras on Isle Royale. And so this really, to me, is kind of like digging back into Earth face first. And this might be, there's something formulaic here where it's kind of like layer upon layer of darkness and then a blast of light, sort of at the end of each verse. So, the idea that there's another world, but it's inside of this world. Maybe if we stop separating heaven from earth, and then we can kind of maybe get somewhere. With just living in one place, spiritually and physically at the same time. That's kind of what it's about.
I love that. And for those who are watching with us tonight, we've got some pictures here from the island where he was writing these songs, and we'll check those out later as well. And if you're just listening to the podcast version, we'll have links in the show notes. But now we're going to give this song a spin. Very excited to kick off our hour with Stranger Angels, the title track from David Huckfelt here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Next of kin to the wayward wind I'm going. I can't sing this dance or dance this song, I'm gone. Some place where I won't make the greedy richer. On the rock and birch bark shores of old Manon. Gather everything you hold dear. Practice giving it away. There's another world, but it's in this world. into our hands. To whose voodoo economics are you in debt deep? And who said it was the clothes that make the man? So gather everything you hold dear. Practice giving it away. There's another world, but it's in this world. Stranger angels move away. Wild Mustang start in the hills outside Las Vegas. And the west is burning like a lake of fire. When the desert comes to swallow up our prairies, you wish you had not dared call God alive. There's another spirit on the water. There's another hollow square, they say. There's another world, but it's in this world. Stranger angels lead the way.
Don't want to tread on those angels right there. David Huckfelt with Stranger Angels, the title track to his 2019 solo album that we are revisiting today with David Huckfelt joining us live on the show. And Connie says haunting, and I would totally agree with that. I think, in many traditions, angels and ghosts are, can occupy similar territory. And it definitely has that otherworldly vibe that you were talking about. And that wind
Yeah.
that you heard both at the beginning and the end feels especially resonant tonight. We were talking earlier about the crazy winds happening here in Minnesota tonight. But was that actual wind you recorded kind of near where you were writing these songs on Isle Royale, or was this, just a track you found somewhere?
No, I did some amateur field recordings out there. I recorded wind and waves, and if you watch the video, it's a lot of my footage from the little cabin I was at. The especially the nighttime trail camera footage is. I mean, if you think you understand the world that we live in, just watch some of that. Watch what a moose does at 4 in the morning, and so in a way it's haunted. If, Anthony, if you want to pull up the image of the moose skulls, this is on Isle Royal. You walk around a few bends in the woods and you come upon the Moose and Wolf Research Center, and there's about 100 skulls, and moose racks just in the woods. So yes, very haunting on one regard until you meet, the elderly couple that's been caring for this research for 40 years, and talking about balance in nature. So, just going into that song, you know, I feel haunted by how good that band is. That's some of my best friends on planet Earth. Almost all of them uh, in a room together in Wisconsin, in Menominee. And that's Eric Koskinen, Michael Rosetto, and Jeremy Olasaker, who are our guitar chorus was in one room together. Mostly I feel like they were just goofing off, having the time of their life. And
Wow.
the
So
rest
those
of
are all
us,
recorded live, all that we were listening to there?
yeah, because the idea, I mean, not that there's not overdubs on this record, there are, but putting those three musicians in a room together, giving them a little time to work out who was going to cover what, but they're truly playing off each other. And then the rhythm section, myself, JT Bates on drums, and Darren Gray, who is a phenomenal bass player, a lot of free jazz with Jim O'Rourke, and also plays in the Tweedy Band. So that's the crew for this, and the icing on the top was Amelia Meath from Sylvan Esso. Those are her vocals,
Mm.
singing harmonies on that song.
It's just beautiful, and I mean, I was going to comment on the kind of the spacious sounds that we were hearing, anyways. The kind of the lush reverbs and things like that. But now I'm wondering if I'm not hearing a little bit of that recording space that you're in. You said it was a barn, an old barn.
Yeah, it's called the Drum Farm. It's a nice, it's a good studio, but it definitely is. It definitely you can tell it was a barn, and I wasn't gonna go. I'm not really. You kind of this is almost peak technology for me. Like I've got my typewriter is over there. I wasn't going to make a record unless I could get the people in a room together for at least 3 days. That's just that's my entry point performance wise to music is to do it together, looking at each other in the eyes. And so you know that was important to me. On the other hand, I'm not totally Amish. I'm not opposed to the future. So the last thing we did on this record is we had Andrew Broder come in and mix some samples into some of the tracks. So certainly Broder is responsible for some of the sounds going on even in this particular track too.
Right on. But the dialogue between the musicians is just real time,
Yeah.
and you can really feel
Yeah.
that in this
Yeah, the way
recording.
the interplay of the rhythms of the guitars is just so great on that. Yeah. And
Thank
that's
you.
three of the best right there you mentioned. So
Truly, yeah.
And anytime a
I
banjo
rem-
is featured on the show, we
yeah. Yeah.
well,
another angel gets
More
his
thumbs
wings here.
up here.
I wanted to bring that out early just to boost the morale.
Well, Michael's one of the most unique and talented banjo players that I've heard. So it sounds great.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I remember reading, just going through those verses when, reading articles about a herd of Mustangs that lived in the high desert outside of Las Vegas that were dying of starvation because there's a drought and wildfires and, just the imagery alone. A lot of it is kind of culled from news clippings and little things I save here and there. But that really just point to the attack line that if you're trading this world for the next world, I don't think it's going to work out well for anybody. So
Yeah. Amen to that. Looks like Sandy's joining us from Chicago, and windy there too. No surprise there. But if you just tuned into the back catalog listening party, just join the party. Tell us where you're tuned in from, if you're enjoying a snack or beverage, and of course, share any comments or questions as we go today, chatting with David Huckfelt. And the next song that you picked to feature on today's show is King Whirl. Is there anything you want to say about the song before we take a listen?
just trying to be brief. I thought it would a happier guy would have stuck a happier song in the number 2 slot, but this was this, and again I don't think of him that way. This song, honestly, at least every verse could have been its own song. That's how much I packed into this this song, and there's a brief period in Greek mythology where Whirlwind overthrows Zeus, and it's complete chaos, and Whirl is king. So, as a jumping off point, I mean, this song to me has a lot of no spiritual surrender, like the personal kind of resistance to it. However, you can translate it out into the world. So, and there's a lot of banjo. So, Ellen, you get, it starts at banjo. So,
Excellent.
Let's give it a spin. This is King Whirl from David Huckfelt here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
In this old world where world is king, look way bound away from the feather to the wing. For the least and the last, the lost we sing, turning the wine back to water. I drone on the summit when the moon is high, unarmed forces by my side, a scout on the mesa with the cavalry behind, turning the wine back to water. Tell me when the horses of war will be on a flower mountain, loose and free. We'll close the big banks of misery, turning the wine back to water. In this old world where world is king, look way bound away from the feather to the wing. For the least and the last and the lost we sing, turning the wine back to water. With his golden handcuffs on your mind there, kid, black snake is crawling in the watershed, and star-spangled nails on your coffin lid, turning the wine back to water. So tonight I smell the smoke from an unlit fire. Black elk, he listens to the lonesome choir. St. Francis and the wolf and their funeral attire, turn the wine back to water. In this old world where world is king, look way bound away from the feather to the wing. For the least and the last and the lost we sing,
All right.
Nice.
That was David Huckfelt with King Whirl from his 2019 album Stranger Angels, which we are revisiting today on the Back Catalog Listening Party with David Huckfelt joining us live. And looks like Penny made it to the party too.
You're
Welcome,
welcome,
Penny. And then Chris said, great song, a little Flecktones-ish. That's right. Some great banjo playing. And I'm sure Michael Rossetto wouldn't mind having Bella Fleck being making that comparison.
He wouldn't mind at all.
I just love the kind of tones that he gets out of the banjo, and also just the tones in general on the instruments. They all have this kind of soft, warm, earthy kind of feel. Even the effects that are used are kind of these more analog effects. Were these decisions? I know you mentioned you had someone come in and mix it and do other things, but in terms of like the sonic landscape, did you have much direction on that, or did you just kind of say these are the voices of my friends who I want to play on the record?
I mean, I'm over there, in an isolation booth with 30 pages of lyrics, and I'm still changing lyrics as we're tracking. And I just take a kind of a like United Nations approach where I'm like, I get, 6 very fluent speakers and don't tell them what to do for 1 second, And so I think, once I can, I have opinions about whether we're capturing the essence of the song and how we're approaching it, but you know, I don't presume, it's highly trained assassins in the room. I would never tell them how to go about whether they should poison or, do a pipe bomb or what. But this song in particular, Eric Koskinen, if your car breaks down or your song kind of breaks down, just let him fix it. And so he kind of took control on a certain arrangement on this, and actually I gave him credit, in the as a songwriter on the song. So this is one too where where my head's at, when I hear the song again, there's a line that John Keats wrote in a letter to the poet to Shelley, and he said, when it comes to your poems, load every rift with ore. In other words, like pack every, you know what I mean? Sometimes, and I said that to a friend of mine once, and he's like, well, dude, you might end up with a pretty heavy song then. And, you don't necessarily want to drive a tank to a picnic every day, but like there's Richard Brodigan lines in that song. I'm talking about Geronimo. I'm talking about the 1%. I'm talking about, something I read about Pope Francis was that he was really a pope that was for the least, the last, and the lost among us. So as a songwriter, these things swirl, and I try to keep them in a notebook as a expression of the subconscious, so that when it's time to really dig into songwriting, there's a little backlog there, and you can see which ideas are friendly with each other. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that each verse was like kind of a song unto itself, or could be, and as you said, each one is packed with a lot of stuff and ideas. Have you ever thought about expanding any of these verses into their own songs, like a collapsible, expandable cup?
I think some of them have worked into other songs, like maybe not verbatim, but I think definitely a couple of the themes, and maybe even they spill over to another track or two from the record. Sometimes as a songwriter, you feel like you're saying the same thing and try over and over and trying to find a new way of saying it. But I think, the idea that like, this whole turning the wine back to water, somebody came up to me and was like, well, that sounds like a really stupid idea. Let's just drink wine. And I said, the point taken, but if we don't figure out how to curb some excess so that, the wine for the 1% is the water for the rest of us that are trying to get by. So I just tend to, if there's not something in a song that really piques my interest sort of philosophically, I have a hard time singing it or getting behind it. Um, just recently, I wrote a song that was under 3 minutes, and I took myself out for a steak dinner because what a congratulatory thing, you know, I, less than 3 minutes. So
I love that.
The Back Catalog Listening Party is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Supporting the show with small and large donations every month, this committed group of music lovers keep the party going and enjoy special perks like getting first look at our upcoming guests and invitations to private after parties and live stream performances with the artists. If you'd like to learn how you can become a patron of the show, please visit patreon.com/backcatalog listening party.
Well, if you have any comments or questions for David as we go along today, feel free to throw them in the comments. All I can say is, this was your, obviously not your first record, not your first rodeo. You did a bunch of albums with the Pines. But as your first sort of solo album, you said you were there with, pages of notes and, you're changing some of the songs in the studio. Do you feel like that first experience is different than how you approach recording now just because it was your first time? Or do you feel like that's kind of the way you roll? Because I would imagine there's a bit of a learning curve from making a record with a band and then one that's sort of just you.
yeah, that's between you, me, and whoever's on here, I was dying for the autonomy and the freedom to make those kind of choices. When you're in a band with multiple songwriters, you got to play ball on every level. So this was, it's almost laughable to call it a solo project. If you look at the liner notes, between the band and special guests. But the truth is, to answer your question, I'm assembling most of these characters right now as we speak for another session along these lines in April down at Pachyderm.
Nice.
Because the truth is, it was the most rewarding, kind of rich, substantial and fun session I've ever been a part of. So I'm kind of trying to repeat the experiment with some, also learning. I always like to introduce one person who is not part of the pack. So, for instance, Darren Gray, nobody knew him. He's the bass player, and everybody was trying to impress him with their playing because he was so good that it just really kept everybody. It wasn't a bachelor party.
Interesting. Do you have someone lined up for the Pachyderm session?
I got a couple ideas. We'll just
All
see
right.
how weird we want to get it. I'm not going to say that Alan Sparhawk is not on the list. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting how you're writing these songs, but you're kind of playing the band in the sense that you're stepping out and letting them go, and now knowing that you put someone in there to change the dynamics. I mean, that really is another way of producing and creating something that's meaningful to you. So
And go ahead.
I was just going to quickly say, J.T. Bates is a co-producer on Stranger Angels, and he brought Darren Gray to the table, and it just turns out that the drummer who everybody's wanted on their records for 30 years has a couple of good ideas about record making, and
yeah.
So it was a true pleasure to put him in charge of some of that stuff.
Wonderful. And also you've had a long rapport with JT. I mean, he played on, I think, all those Pines records, right?
Everyone.
Yeah. So kind of knows how you work and knows a lot about you as an artist, which is really special having that kind of relationship. Well, it shows on this record because this record sounds fantastic. And
thank you.
And if you, no matter how you are tuned in, it will sound better if you get the high res tracks. You can buy a physical copy of this album on CD or vinyl from davidhuckfelt.com. There's also t-shirts, obviously other recordings. You can check out all the stuff at davidhuckfelt.com. Highly recommended. And sounds
There's a lot
really
of
good.
details happening, like luckily I get to listen to the WAV files and I got headphones on. The stereo field, I mean, there's things on one side versus the other. And there's, like I mentioned, some of these effects that are on the instruments are kind of swirling around and helping tell the story in a way that if you're just listening to it on your phone or on, like a mono speaker on your computer, you should definitely get the high res files, put on a pair of headphones or some nice speakers, and enjoy it. I think the way that it was meant to be heard.
Yeah,
it occurred.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels very immersive. I mean, I feel like all the songs, I mean, you kind of want to dive in and sink your teeth into because there's so much happening lyrically and musically. You just want to surround yourself with it like a big blanket. I think it's best done if you do that, as Tony mentioned, with headphones.
And
I was gonna start up I was gonna start one of a streaming platform where, I mean, say for example that you want to hear Bird on a Wire by Leonard Cohen. That's a $1,400 song just for listening.
Mhm.
If you want to hear Gordon Lightfoot, Early Morning Rain, I'm sorry, that's $2,000. You're gonna have to save up just to hear it. And I'm obviously joking, but it hit me once when we were all driving to play a house concert somewhere, and there were 5 people in the car who never stopped talking about music from the minute we rolled out of town till we got to their driveway. And you know, I don't think that most roofers talk about roofing the whole way to the job. By the time we showed up there, you have people who love making records. Like Gillian Welch said, somebody figured out we were going to do it anyway, and we would do it for free. But whenever you can buy someone's record, I mean, people I know are putting heart and soul into records every bit as much as they ever were, and it's where it's at.
Yeah.
Agreed. And I don't think people understand how the streaming kind of economics have changed for a lot of touring musicians and bands. And it's great for getting your music out there, but not really great for giving you the money you need to make the next record. So one more plug, just head on over to davidhuckfelt.com, buy the record, buy the vinyl, a t-shirt, anything really, because it goes directly to him. And one CD purchase is like 1,000 streams or more, I'm assuming, and so it means a lot. And you'll also have this great artifact as well.
Yeah, for sure. And the holidays are coming up, so no one gives the gift of like a Spotify stream, but getting a physical copy of something that came from an artist directly is really special. And I just want to mention the artwork on here real quick before we move on to the next song, because I love it for so many reasons, but of course it looking like the spine of a book feels special because there's so much. You've already mentioned a bunch of literary influences and that you were a poetry and philosophy major. And so tell us a little bit about how this cover art was conceived.
Yeah, this is, I'm so fortunate to have been able to work with a visual artist, painter, and muralist named Cheyenne Randall. He's on Instagram as Indian Giver, and he's a Lakota artist, but he transcends all kinds of genres. He does wheat paste murals all over the American West, abandoned buildings, old churches. And I saw his work at the Heard Museum in Phoenix. He had about a 60-foot picture of John Trudell pasted on the outside of the building. And he's done both of my record covers now, and a couple T-shirts for me. But it's so important to me that the image matches, that feels provocative. This one, that woman on the cover is from a postcard from 1907. Her name is Every Wind, which is one of the songs on the record, and he had made this image even before I made the record. So when I was going through his stuff, it felt like he made that one for me. So but his work is incredible. I recommend checking him out. I've got several of his prints around the house, and I'm hoping he's not too famous to work with me anymore because I saw he just did something for Zach Bryan. So we'll see.
Well, it really is just just fits like a glove for the content, the lyrical content, and everything that I'm hearing. If you're just listening to the podcast version, we'll make sure to link to the artist and his website at backcatalog.listeningparty.com.
And again, you can get this in vinyl versions. So just think, I mean, that's worth the, I don't know, 15, $20, however much it is, 25, whatever, just to get the artwork, this cover in big format and have, even if you're listening on streaming devices, having this as artwork for your house, I think would be really special. But moving on to the music, the next track you picked to feature, David, on today's show is Still and Still Moving. Is there anything you want to say about this before we listen?
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad I was smart enough to include that song because this song was sent over to me as an instrumental by Michael Rossetto, who used to live in the Twin Cities here, had a band called the Spaghetti Western String Company. Michael and I are very old friends, and every once in a while he says, "Can you do something with this?" And this one, I was like, "Oh yeah." I think I had it back to him within like 3 hours, and I had written 7 or 8 verses and trimmed them back. So the title is taken from a T.S. Eliot poem, um, "To Be Still and Still Moving," and if anybody can think of a better way to try to be, let me know. But that sounds pretty good for me. It's a good aim. So, but it's Michael's music and my lyrics.
I love it. This is David Huckfelt, Still and Still Moving, here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
New moon
think I needed that song tonight. Still and Still Moving by David Huckfelt from his 2019 album Stranger Angels, which we are revisiting on the show today with David Huckfelt. And yeah, I love the feel of it, the warmth of the song. And who is singing on the vocals on that track with you?
Yeah, that is it's Dave Simonette, Trampled by Turtles
Mm,
is in there, but more so is Consti Brown, Greg
mm,
Brown's daughter, Consti, Pieta Brown's sister. One of the, I've never known anybody to nail, just be able to pick out harmonies out of thin air, no matter what the song or so Consti's singing with me. We've been singing together for a long time.
very nice. Well, it sounds fantastic.
Mm.
And Chris had a question. He said, do you compose on piano, guitar, or other? I know whenever I've seen you perform, you play guitar, but maybe you write on other instruments.
I do. It's called a typewriter. Yeah, I com I compose on this thing right here, and I say it like kind of not jokingly, but it's you know, the obvious answer is guitar. I'm a guitar player, but the way that I compose is weird because I've been writing poems for a lot longer than I've been playing an instrument. So what happens for me usually, if I'm honest, um, I write lyrics out either on legal pad or typewriter, and then I also, if I had to guess, I'd say I know about 1,600 songs,
Hmm.
cover songs, folk songs, public domain songs. It's just something I've always done is quickly learn and play other people's songs. So I think that my composing process is to kind of, to use songs as meditation points and leaping off points when I hit on something in an arrangement that feels original, that some lyrics are calling for something a little darker, and there's folk melodies in a lot of these songs that are, really old public domain songs, but it usually bounces back and forth from the lyric to the guitar. And, I've heard other songwriters say this, but I'll move heaven and earth to make an important rhyme fit lyrically. If it has to do it, it shall
Yeah.
be done. So
And so does that mean you write with with like a a tune in your mind just for like a sense of meter, like to have a sense of flow as you write?
yeah. Sometimes I'll do it like that, where I'll literally take an old folk song and change all the lyrics and write new ones, and then go back and reverse write a whole different melody or song underneath it. It's kind of decidedly untechnical, but it's also you know sometimes when you put enough of these songs in your brain, then the stuff that comes tumbling out is sometimes it is surprisingly, it's like, oh, that's not from anywhere but just from today. So
I'm always intrigued with this idea that, some of these folk melodies, these ones that have been passed down forever. I mean, music and lyrics were always ways to share knowledge and to keep the next generation alive, with all kinds of important information. And I always wonder if there was just some melodies and rhythms that like we're just tuned into as humans that are more of a conduit for absorbing that information. And sometimes when I hear music like this, seems to be tapping into something kind of bigger than, whatever that folk song we knew of it was. I think before that, maybe there was something else that these lyrics and these thoughts and these ideas were attached to, that it's almost like a little packet of software that can travel from, from
yeah.
generation to generation. And I think, I don't know, I was just more amusing on that than anything. And hearing you say that and your approach to it just kind of makes me think that there's something there.
I think you're right. I mean, I think there's even chord changes, progressions, the 1 to the 6th, even the 1 to the 3. There are certain, it's almost like eye contact in a conversation or someone putting their hand on your shoulder.
Hmm.
They are programmed in a emotional palette to soften us, to being receptive, to difficult emotion or intense emotion. And I do think some of these folk melodies, like we don't know why we connect to them, but it's a little bit genetic, a little bit cultural, and then I think it's just, those changes are, you ride an emotional river. And there's a couple songs, there's a great folk artist. He's now about 85 or 86. He was a president of the Library of Congress folk song division, and his name is Joe Hickerson. He lives out in Portland. I sought him out and sat around at a bar while he and 9 of his buddies sang a cappella sea shanties and songs that Spider John covered that I thought Spider John knew the oldest version, and these guys went back another 60 years, So I think it's incredible. I like to try to be a part of that process. You know.
Yeah, and I love that too because I think so much of like even with these contemporary sounds, even with samples and electric guitars and some of the other things that people think of as modern music, you're really tapping into the real folk roots of it, and carrying on that tradition, which I think is so important and fantastic, and then telling those human stories which we all relate to. If any of you out there have any more comments or questions for David, our time is going way
really
too
fast.
fast. I have like 20 million more questions I want to ask David.
Yeah.
But the one that I will ask right now is, you said you wrote these, you had this residency in Isle Royale up north, and Lake Superior, and you were there for, what did you say, it was 16 days or 14 days?
2 weeks. Yeah.
2 weeks, and you wrote like 16 songs. I know there's 12 songs on this record. Were all the songs on the record from that residency, or were there a few from older? It's incredible. That makes sense.
No, I mean, I try not to over romanticize the residencies are tough because if you put too much pressure on yourself, then you might not get anything out of it. You can overload it. So some of these songs were started, some were in process, but the truth is I was on such a roll that when I finished some that were in process, I could get around to starting from scratch. And I was supposed to bring food, and I brought books. The park rangers were like, they made me unload all my own stuff because it was too heavy. Because it was like piles of history books and stuff. So,
seeing an empty kitchen there. Here we were showing a couple images here of just the beautiful landscape that had to really make an impact.
Yeah, I have this image of you that you wouldn't have had time to eat anyway, writing all those songs. So, and look at all that nature watching with the moose with the eyes. Yeah, there is something about seeing animals in their natural habitat at night that evokes those kind of otherworldly creatures. That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, that's how I had a bottle of Jim Beam that was about this big. And I would sit out on a bench by a cliff and listen to the demos I made and try not to right there. And I try not to fall into the lake. Yeah.
Well, if you are just listening to the podcast, you'll have to check out these videos and photos that we're looking at, because they're amazing. If you go to the backcataloglisteningparty.com and go to this episode with David Huckfelt, you'll be able to see the show notes there. And I also want to remind folks that if you want to know more about David's music, you can buy this album on CD and LP. You can check out tour dates and all of that at davidhuckfelt.com. And there's an email list, I believe, so you can get notified when things are happening, like that new record you're talking about going into the studio soon.
When can we expect that, David?
There's going to be a record of covers of songs. It's going to come out in I did 14 cover songs. I whittled a list of 60 down to 14.
Wow.
And so that'll come out hopefully by March or April, and then my third record of my own songs will come out probably in the fall.
Excellent. So you want to stay on top of that stuff. Also, tour dates. David Huckfelt has some tour dates coming up, and I think February you'll be in Arizona, right?
Yeah, February in Tucson and surrounding areas, and then there could be some more shows with Cloud Cult on the horizon. I did several shows with Cloud Cult this fall, so yeah, finishing these record projects will be priority number 1, 2, 3, and 9. So,
The Back Catalog Listening Party is brought to you by EFS Publicity. Founded by veteran publicist, promoter, DJ, and musician Ellen Stanley, EFS brings an artist's perspective to the table, working to help clients get to the next level in their career. Services include national and international media campaigns, radio promotions, tour press, crowdfunding, grant writing, and more. Get a quote or set up a consultation today at efspublicity.com. Well, lots of stuff to talk about. We don't have enough time to dig into everything, but we do have one more song that we want to get to if you're game to hang out with us for a little bit longer, which is Star Nation. Is there anything you want to say about this?
well, I would say, Anthony, you can kind of maybe skip into the meat of this a little bit. Like, this represents, this is my music. I wrote this track, and then Floyd Red Crow Westerman, leader in the American Indian movement, his widow, Rosie Westerman, gave me permission to use his voice. And just to mess with things even further, we had Andrew Broder throw some Charles Bukowski in there from a home cassette recording that he did.
Wow.
So this is like kind of a capstone on the record itself. What I was trying to maybe say that I didn't say myself. Put it in a track called Star Nation. So,
all right. Well, do you have time for us to listen to the whole track?
Yeah, I do.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. I want to hear this capstone, and I know all the listeners out there do as well. This is David Huckfelt, Star Nation, here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Time evolves and comes to a place where it renews again. There's first a purification time, then there's renewal time. We are getting very close to this time now. We were told we would see America come and go. In a sense, America is dying from within.
How to round out a tape, who knows? I hope I haven't bored you too much. Poetry tends to bore. I know it bores me. It makes me miserable. Reading it or listening to it, I guess.
Everything is coming to a time when prophecy and man's inability to live on earth in a spiritual way will come to a crossroad of great problems.
Anyhow, the stuff makes me miserable. I think
if you're not spiritually connected to the earth, reality of how to live on earth, it's likely you will not make it.
rounding it out, Bukowski hanging on the ropes with you. Down like stairways, up like smoke. Crow, mountain, iris,
We're here on earth only a few winters. Then we go to the spirit world. The spirit world is more real than most of us believe. The spirit world is everything.
Watch for Bukowski going. Good night, baby. Subscribe to NOLA Express. Box 2342 2342.
Nothing stays the same.
Goodbye. Goodbye now.
You should learn how to plant something. That's the first connection. You should treat all things as spirit. Realize that we are one family.
On and on, but we're not like that, are we? All right, good night. Hang in. What the hell?
It's never something like the end.
Bye. Jesus.
Just like life, there is no end to life.
Wow.
Wow.
Star Nation, David Huckfelt here on the Back Catalog Listening Party from his 2019 album Stranger Angels. And great to hear those voices echoing back at us and feeling so relevant right now. I very quickly, when you were crafting that song, were the musicians like listening to these words while they were playing, or did you just kind of do them separately and piece it together later?
I had a maniacal idea that that I was going to turn this into this major spoken word piece, and so we just cut the instrumental, and I was like, it's going to be this trance kind of hypnotic, a little bit indigenous kind of drum beat riff thing, and we'll move it around and let Jeremy go crazy. But I couldn't decide to go very, with Floyd Red Crow Westerman or this Bukowski thing, because they represented two parts of my thinking. And when I had Andrew Broder in, he said, well, let's see if maybe they can have a conversation, these two voices. And listening to it, I've listened to it so long, but it's, it's a little like, what I can say is it represents, this two kinds of responsibilities. The native perspective, John Trudell said that everyone talks about freedom. We all want our freedom, but the truth is that it's more about responsibility. If we fulfill our responsibilities, we'll have our freedom. And the truth is the responsibility we have to the earth and the people is one, but crazy old Bukowski there represents the other voice, which is, you have a responsibility to be yourself. As weird, you know what I mean? I mean, he was relentlessly, brutally Charles Bukowski, for better, for worse. Takes a lot of courage to do that, And so I was trying, maybe the jury, my personal jury is out. Can you do both? You live for yourself or you live for your family, your clan, your neighbors. I think you can do both, but it's going to get messy,
Love it.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Well, get this album, folks, if you're liking the songs. Alinda said it worked as you intended. Great song. Penny says that was amazing. And Chris said he just bought his vinyl copy, wants to request you to sign it. So I bet that
I think
happen.
we can make that happen. Yeah.
Right.
I really want to say thank you to it's so cool to see people piping in real time, and for everyone that listened in. It means a lot to be able to go back over this record that was so kind of important in my development. So thank you so much for all the comments and for listening in.
Yeah, thank you so much for spending this hour plus with us, David. This has been such a treat. Again, check out David's music at davidhuckfelt.com. I also want to thank all the folks who are joining the live show, but in particular, our Patreon supporters. These are the folks that keep this show going and have kept it going for over 4 years. Penny, Anna, Linda, Bevan, Connie, Vaughn, Alan, Chris, Alex, Becky, Peggy, Joe, Jim, Beverly, John, Fred, Tim, Sarah, David, Jocelyn, Matt, Steve, Mark, Homestead Pick and Parlor, Severin, Lynn, Mary, Nikki, Joni, David, CJ, Wiley, Stephanie, Christy, Diane, Hetty, Sandy, neighbor Ann, and Ann BZ. And even if your name isn't Ann, because we have a lot of Anns in our Patreon community, you can still join us, patreon.com/back catalog listening party. And that's how you can get invited to these live tapings of the show. But no matter how you've found us, thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming to the party. It's always a treat to listen to music with you and talk about the songs with great artists like David. So thank you so much. And
thank you, David, one more time, on behalf of all of us who needed this tonight or wherever you are in listening to this podcast. I know it's gonna touch people in a lot of different ways, and we really appreciate you sharing your songs and your stories and this hour with us today.
Yeah, I can't thank you enough. I needed it too, and I'm truly grateful. It's a really badass show you guys got going on here. Can't
Thanks.
Well,
say that.
thank
We'll
you.
put that in the
Well,
press kit.
yeah, badass. David Huckfelt.
We
Yeah.
love it, and we can't wait to hear what's coming up next for you. And we'll be shouting from the hills when the next project comes out.
Thank you
Indeed.
very much.
Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you
All
back
right.
next week for another edition of the Back Catalog Listening Party. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody. Keep supporting independent music. Thanks for joining us on the Back Catalog Listening Party. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review, which helps more people discover our show and our guests.
And do you want to be a part of the live show, get a first look at upcoming guests, and receive invites to private online parties and live streams? Then join our Patreon community at backcataloglisteningparty.com.
Have a great week. We'll see you back here next Friday for another edition of the Back Catalog Listening Party.